Hi everybody, I'm Luke Hector from the Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, please remember to thumb up the video, consider subscribing to the channel or Patreon, or better still, leave a comment in the video about any of the games I talk about today. So we're here for another Top 100. Yes, I always enjoy doing these, even though they are a bit of an effort to get through, particularly as today we're in another heat wave. Seriously, global warming, this is getting ridiculous. But that being said, I gotta talk about 100 awesome games. Now, first of all, before I start, quick little shout out to Pub Meeple. Pub Meeple is a website that allows you to do those like top 9 collages that you see on social media all the time, but also they allow you to do rankings for anything. It doesn't even have to be board games, it can be just ranking anything. But essentially what it allows me to do is to import my collection and rated games from Board Game Geek and essentially just stick them in a giant list and rank them 2 games at a time, side by side. Which one do I prefer? It does this about 500 to 1,000 times. Yes, it does get a little bit repetitive, but then at the end it spits out a draft list for me to start tweaking for any anomalies and such. Trust me, the first time I did a top 100 for this show, it was on post-it notes.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious, and don't call me Shirley.
I kid you not. I just wrote out about 150 games on post-it notes and I was there constantly shuffling through paper to try and get the list done. It hurt. A lot. But this Pub Meeple ranking system allows me to get it done much faster, even though it's still not a short process. But yeah, without it, this top 100 probably wouldn't be done each year because it would just be far too much effort on top of everything else. So thank you Pub Meeple, give them a look and use their engine for your ranking system in the future. So bear in mind, disclaimer, these are my top 100 games in my humble opinion, okay? These are my top 100 games, not necessarily the top 100 games, although I do argue that some of them probably should be in that category.
Everybody got that?
I've played tons of games, a lot more since I started getting into gaming, and now it's getting harder and harder to narrow it down to 100. When I first started, I was putting games that were like 6, 7 out of 10 ratings on my top 100 because I hadn't played that many games at the time, but this was like years and years ago. But nowadays, a lot more has happened. A lot more games have released. Tastes have changed and all sorts. So now, when you get to the bottom end of this list, do not assume that the bottom end of this game is garbage, because the lower end of my top 100 is still games I rank an 8/9 out of 10. There are no 7s on this list. You cannot be just good and get on this list. In fact, even if you're just considered great, you have to be content with the fact that you might not make it on the top 100. Now, most of this list is considered games that I would give a seal of excellence to, or seal of distinction, sorry, that's my rating. So 9s and 10s for a good 80% to 90% of this list of what I would rate these games. So yeah, everything on here is the creme de la creme as far as I'm concerned. Now, no game is ever flawless, so there are going to be reasons why some of them have dropped, some of them have risen, etc. And even when you get to the top 10, there's going to be flaws with those games. You know, no game is ever perfect. But for those of you who like stats, I've got my phone over there with all the details on it because I don't have a fancy clipboard and I don't want to be holding my phone all the time. But essentially, I have got 18 games that have fallen off the list since last time. 18, nearly a fifth of my list isn't on the top 100 anymore. Not to say that they're garbage and out of my collection and out of my life forever, they just didn't quite beat the cut. But then that means we have 14 games that have now like come new on the list, so there's a lot of new content to throw in there, and 4 games that have returned to the top 100. Why would a game fall off and come back? Well, you're going to hear a lot of those explanations in this 10 because 3 of them are on this batch of 10. So we'll get on to that. But, well, yeah, let's just go. Let's go. That's what you're here for.
Get on with it. Yes, get on with it.
My number 100 is a Lacerda Eagle Griffin game. Yes, you know that I have had 4 games on my shelf with regards to Vital Lacerda. I don't like CO2, I don't like Escape Plan, and On Mars was just far too complicated for any normal person to get into. But this one is Lisboa. Lisboa was the Vital Lacerda game set in, well, Lisboa, in old days where it had gone a catastrophe, like earthquakes and fires and all sorts of destroy the city, and you're essentially rebuilding it up while influencing various noble characters. It's not so much the city building aspect that I like, because that's mainly just a grid with rows and columns and stuff and little bonuses. What I like about this Lisboa is the card system. You play these cards into your portfolio and you've got an up section and a down section, and depending which cards you play and where you play them, have different effects. Like they'll influence different nobles, you'll be able to do different court actions, you'll be able to get money. The treasury is influenced in such a way, and it's really that card system that sells Lisboa for me. I mean, it looks cool on the table. It's a little bit tricky to see where everything is on the board, but other than that, it still looks pretty. And I do like the column stuff that goes on with the city. It's just not necessarily the reason I like the game a lot. It's really the card system, because it's you've got a hand of cards, they've got sort of multiple uses, and you're kind of like, I need the influence, but then I also want to do this action. But then if I don't do this action, I can't do this. He's got all those courtiers there, which means it's going to cost me more influence. Well, I could do with some money as well. And then even when you're drawing another card at the end of your turn, you're like, that looks good. That looks good. Oh, that'd be a nice card. Yeah, I could use that for later. That sort of thing just really intrigues me. So 100 Lisboa. Will all 3 of my other Lacerda games feature on this top 100? You have to wait and see. So 99 is the first of the returned games to the list, and that is, I think, actually the only game I like that has Alexander Pfister in the title for designers. Yeah, don't kill me. But this is Broom Service. Broom Service usually fluctuates up and down into my top 100 and that. It usually depends on how many times I get it played. But this is a cool, fairly oldish game actually, as far as I'm aware, from Alea. And it allows you take control of a witch, and you are going around this landscape delivering potions of different colours to various places for points. Okay, that sounds pretty generic. What makes this game though is that role selection. The idea that you have those different witch cards that you can play, the little gnomes and the various other witches and trolls and stuff and druids, but you have a selection of them at the start of the round. You choose which ones you want to play, but then it's a case of, right, I'm the brave weather witch or whatever, I'm gonna do this. And it's like, well, hang on a minute, did anybody else around the group also pick that card? Because if they do, they're gonna usurp me and get the action, and I'm gonna get nothing. So maybe I should be a cowardly version, but then I don't get as much. But did you honestly pick that card, or did you not? This can really destroy friendships if you're not careful, because you are, in a good way. Actually, how could that be a good way? I don't know, I digress. But this one does have you shouting a lot, because you're really mindful of the fact that you want to play this particular card, but you can't rule out the fact that other players may have played that card, and it scares you to heaven and back. Playing this with 5 players is definitely the way to play it, because then you have none of this like little fiddly rules about, certain roles being bewitched each round. No, 5 players, you get all the roles and all the tension. It really is a good, fun, tense game, and it just keeps fluctuating at this area of the top 100, mainly just because of getting it played and the fact that, well, you have to get used to the fact that it is quite in your face sometimes. Another returning game to the list. Yeah, and this one's taken a while to actually return to the list, actually, because, to be fair, it doesn't get played very often. It's not a game I tend to solo that much. It's not a game that I tend to get into groups that much, except for a select few. But when I do get it played, I do really enjoy it. And the reason I can't get it played in many groups is because of the nature of XCOM, the board game. This really takes the XCOM theme and does well with it. It's got all the sound effects and all the look from the video games. But I've got some mates that I can play this with 4 of us. We know what we're doing, and each of us can take a station and still do well. But it is a timed game for the most part. Half of it is timed with an app and half of it isn't. And some people don't like that whole timed aspect. And certainly if you're teaching new players this, it's like, oh, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? Ah! It's a little bit scary for them. But find a group who knows what they're doing. This is such a cool co-op game. The app integration, this is one of the first examples of using an app in a board game, and it does it so well. Teaches you all the rules, gets you all the sound effects, takes you through the timed phase nice and easy, with one person sort of barking out orders. But regardless of which station I'm doing, whether I've got to audit the budget for the whole, like, saving the world, or I've got to kill, UFOs, or I've got to take units on missions, or I've got my favorite is the scientist. I get to, juggle around all these scientists and try and make cool tech for everybody. It's a cool game, very thematic. Yeah, there's a lot of dice rolling and a fair bit of luck, but it's still really good fun to play, and it's tense. It's down to the wire because you feel like you're on the back foot, but eventually you get to that final mission. It's like, come on, we gotta do it this turn because everybody's panicking and we're all gonna die. It does a great job. All right, 98 XCOM. And my 97 is another returning game. Yeah, all 3 returning games that are on this list were all next to each other. That was not planned, it's just the way it is, which means there's only one more game to talk about, and we'll get onto that, I think, next next session, actually, I believe. But anyway, this 97 is a Red Raven game from Ryan Lockett. It is his magnum opus in terms of open world design. It's kind of ridiculous how open world this is, and that is Sleeping Gods. Sleeping Gods, I have played through the whole game, and I feel like I've barely scratched the surface of this thing. And you've got to find so many totems in order to get out of this world that you're in, and when you get to the end, it's like, I think I did pretty well. I found this many totems and I got out. Oh, by the way, there's about another 50 more that you didn't find. Excuse me? I literally can, at some point, once I'm done with Tainted Grail on the other table, I'm going to get this out, I'm going to lay it out, and I'm going to go through and I'm going to just go in a completely different direction and go, you know what, I go this way now. And I'll find a completely different world, different encounters, different playstyle, different characters to explore, different landscapes, in fact. It is a great system. Now, not the best one to save in between games. The save system is very clunky, but if you can just get out on the table, leave it out, whether it's a group of you or preferably solo and 2-player really, it does make for a great, fun, open world sandbox experience. I get to choose what I want to do. Nothing forces me to do this other than obviously an encounter not going my way, but just the sheer amount of content in this, even before you start throwing in things like the dungeons expansions and that, is ridiculous. This one's always been kind of in the low hundreds, like 105, 108, and this year it just seems to have squeaked on at 97. I mean, I'm excited to get it back out, and I do remember having a great time playing it the first time round. It's just a case of long campaign game, need to find the time and the table space to have it out and keep it out. It's taken me long enough just to get Tainted Grail back. Right, I'm just going to use my phone now because this is getting ridiculous trying to stare at it over there because I can't read the stats. So Lisboa dropped 15 places from 85 to 100. The other 3 obviously have just returned to the list. This one has dropped 52 places. What? Hooey, yeah, that's quite a considerable amount of a drop, I think, but it's not the fact that the game is bad, it's just, it's very bloated. It has a long setup time, it has a lot of table space required, and so it really isn't hitting the table anywhere near as much as it used to. But honestly, this game just hasn't quite met my desires to get played, and that is Dinosaur Island. Still love the retro look, still love the dinosaur theme, and I still love the idea of building up this nature park and just going crazy with it. But it's just the fact that it's a lot of setup and a lot of table space required, not to mention it will be a fairly long game with 4 players, particularly if they're new, that it's kind of getting eclipsed by a lot of other games. So I have a feeling that this one could drop off the top 100 at some point, but at the moment it's now sort of moved from top to the bottom of the list just to kind of go, you know what, I still want to play this, but maybe not quite every single week like I did before. There is such a thing as too much for a game. But Dinosaur Island is still fun, building up your theme park, getting the dinosaur exhibits, deciding whether you want fries or a roller coaster or whatever, and using your little workers in such a way to get the DNA to make more dinos. Do you want herbivores and not much excitement? Do you want all the carnivores and all the excitement, but then all the security required before they start eating the tourists? If there's anything that really does irk me a little bit with this game, it's that whole going into the bag and deciding, right, here's all my guests, and if you get unlucky and just pull out a bunch of those purple hooligans, there's not a lot you can do to mitigate that, really. And so there is a bit of a luck of the draw aspect for what is essentially a heavy Euro, but it's still a cool game, just not one that's kind of as like a 10 out of 10 rating that I gave it before. I think now that rating has dropped to about an 8, but I still think it's a quality game. Number 95, we have the first new game to hit the top 100. The first new one. And this one only came out last year, actually. In fact, it featured on my top 10 games of last year. At least the retrospective version. Now, yeah, spoiler alert, the other big brother will be further up the list. Of course it will. But this one was still a really cool spin-off by Antoine Balzer for Seven Wonders, and that is Seven Wonders Architects. Seven Wonders Architects is just a good, simple, fun game. I mean, it's got barely any rules in it that you have to learn. The setup time is literally about 20 seconds. Just get the pieces out of the box and set them up, and that's it. And then you take about, what, like less than 3 to 5 minutes to explain the game, and then you're away. And then within the half-hour mark, you finished. It's a nice, quick, easy filler. But it's still engaging. I mean, yeah, you've only got to choose between 3 decks. You've got to choose from the side or the one in the middle, and then depending on what color card it is, it will do whatever it is. but there's still those science progress tokens to get for special abilities and scoring opportunities. There's still the whole, like, can I get that cat statue and look at the top card of the deck? Do I want to trigger the war? Do I grab the shield strength thinking that I'm going to fight my 2 neighbours? Or should I hold back and go for something else? It's still just light, simple fun. Yeah, okay, it's not a 3-hour meaty Euro, but I'll take a 30-minute light filler any day, and, you know, the production quality's great. It's in a bit of a big box, I gotta admit, but it does well when I take it to events to demonstrate to people, because I can just lay out all 7 of those boxes, 7 people sit down, and I can teach it in no time at all. There's something to be said about simple games, simple light gateway games, and Seven Wonders Architects has wowed me quite a bit. 94, dropping from 76, 18 places, is a giant Euro, which for most people would be in their top 10. Sorry, not a top 10 game for me, but it's still one that I enjoy. Preferably solo, because when you play it with multiple players, it does drag on a little bit too long, and it did need a certain expansion in order to get good, because it was literally a case of, yeah, I think the original game is slightly unbalanced, this is putting me off, but then I was able to get the Norwegians expansion for this, and it really did a good job of boosting up a Feast for Odin. Feast for Odin, the polyomino game of epic proportions, because I don't think there's any game that's even more epic than this when it comes to polyomino laying. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but this one has the 50 to 60 action spaces that you gotta teach. This game is a nightmare to teach. This is why I like to play it solo. All those action spaces are like, oh, I don't want to go there, or there, oh no, I've gone cross-eyed. It's impossible to sort of get this game done, teach easily, but for a solo experience, you've got a very cool little AI system that blocks up the spaces in a neat little way. But then you can just have fun with the sheer sandbox nature of it. Do I want to go exploring other islands? Should I just build up my little storage house? Should I go hunting whales? Should I go hunting deer? Or should I go get all the occupations? Should I just get all the goods and fight, you know, artifacts and stick them in my personal board? Do I harvest a ton of resources? Should I get animals? You know, what, a pig, donkey? You know, whatever. Maybe make some donkey juice. That's a Zia Garcia thing. But yeah, it's a cool game, just not one I want to play multiplayer very often. And that's why this one tends to drop a little bit further down the list. Not to mention you got a lot of setup to do, but as I say, Feast for Odin is still a really cool game. It's an 8 out of 10 for me. I still like to play it every now and again, but usually when I've got the time and the table space to warrant all that stuff. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the box. It's big, it's got, you know, cardboard pieces all over the shop, but it is a good, fun experience. My 93 has actually only dropped 13 places, but it's still a really cool Alea game. Oh, another Alea game on the list, actually. And this is one I tell people to play whenever they say, oh, but I really like Race for the Galaxy and I really like Puerto Rico. Well, this one's kind of an amalgamation of the two in a sense for me, but it's lighter, it's quicker, it's more elegant. Don't like to use that word that much when I describe games, but elegant's the one I'm going to use here, and that is San Juan, the second edition. It is on the shelf right down there, and I still really enjoyed this. You know, Race for the Galaxy is overcomplicated with the symbology, and it really only works at 2-player. Puerto Rico is fine, but again, this one just gives me a much easier experience. Essentially, it uses the role selection mechanic, where you have these different roles, and you pick a role, and you get the ability, but so does everybody else around the table, but yours is slightly better. So you gotta think of the timing, like, do I take this ability now, knowing that everybody else is just gonna do the same thing, or should I wait? Do I really need that bonus? Not really. I'll just wait for you to build and then I can build later. So I'm going to take trading because I've got stuff to trade and you haven't. Cool little system, but I love the fact that everything in this game is just one big deck of cards. That's it. Your currency, your buildings, your resources, everything is just that deck of cards. And you essentially just keep drawing cards and then you use the cards as currency to pay for a building cost, to play a different card for it. So it's sort of multi-use, but not really. It's just the fact that rather than give you unnecessary components, it just uses the cards in the game to do it. It's a cool, clever concept. And the second edition gives you the expanded buildings for a bit more variety. But yeah, this one is quick, easy, done and dusted in 45 odd minutes, get to 12 buildings and you're done. I would sooner rather play San Juan than Puerto Rico or Race for the Galaxy any day. Spoiler alert, they're not on my list, but then again, they've never been on my list, so you should know this by now. So yeah, San Juan is still going strong, just obviously it's not something that I would stick maybe in my top 50, for example. Okay, 2 more to talk about here. My 92 has dropped 44 places, and this is going to annoy some of the heavy Euro fans here because they might have it slightly higher, but I still really enjoy this game. But I've played it a little bit recently, and it's kind of irking me a little bit more because of the punishing nature of it. This is a game that you cannot get wrong. At any point during the game, if something goes wrong for you, you're not going to recover very well. And so it does have that little bit of a runaway leader and pseudo knockout problem. But I still really like playing Tricarion Legends of Illusion, or whatever the tagline is, for Mind Clash games. It's still great fun. The Collector's Edition is a beautiful sight to behold, and that Dalgard's Academy really does expand the options you have in the game. But it is very punishing. It's worker placement, you're putting on this magic act every now and the rounds, you're starting off with basic tricks, but then you've got to get the high level tricks which yield more rewards for coins and points. The problem is everybody else is gunning for the same thing, and spaces are tight. Because it's not just a case of, oh, I can go to that spot. No, I need to go to that spot and have enough power rating in the guy I used in the space I went on to do what it is I want to do. So there's 2 things that people are contesting for, the location and the power space. And so it gets ridiculously tight, particularly at 4 players. And so if something does not go your way, either because of bad timing or someone just jumping in front of you when you least expect it, it can get very problematic. And yeah, you end up in a situation where by halfway through the game, you're kind of like, well, I don't think I've got a chance of winning. You've got a big enough lead. No one's getting in their way.
So you get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.
The tricks are a slight problem child though, because you have to kind of go to the end of the game and plan your way back, saying, I want this high level trick, which means I need this medium trick, and it means I need these low level tricks. If one of the other players takes one of those tricks before you get a chance to, you're kind of screwed. It's very difficult to pull yourself back, and that is why this game has dropped, because as much as I enjoy it, it's not one that I kind of want to play over and over again, because I'm afraid that when I do play it, it's just going to be one of those occasions where am I even in with a shot of winning, or am I literally just going through the motions because I'm sitting at the table? And I haven't really played it solo because, well, it's a massive Mind Clash game. The solo modes are outright complicated as all get out, but I still enjoy the game. I still think it will remain on my top 100, but it's definitely going to probably stay in the bottom part of the top 100 rather than be closer to the top. It's, you know, those realizations have come to pass recently, and that's why it has dropped a bit. And then finally, for this segment, my number 91 has dropped. Oh, I've got to stare really closely at this. 38 places from 53, and that is a Madigo game, which is another sandbox experience. And I do like these sandbox games. These sandbox games are really good fun, but they certainly do take a bit of effort to teach, especially now, as I think one of the things that's affecting my enjoyment of a lot of these games actually is the bloat factor. Do I go a little bit mad at buying the expansions to it, not realising that maybe the game doesn't hit the table enough for me to warrant all that expansion content, not to mention teach it to new players? This is Western Legends. Western Legends is still great fun. Perfectly represents the Western theme. I love the fact that I can be law-abiding or, you know, or like a criminal. I can go, well, with the expansion, I can now decide, right, I want to go prospecting, I want to rustle cattle, I want to go kill people, I want to go shoot that player, I want to go rob a train, I want to go do high-stakes poker, I want to do this poker game. I do love playing poker in this game, but I really love the card mechanic where all the cards are the suits, you know, from a typical deck of playing cards, and you know, they got different abilities that can help you on your turn, but then they're also used in order to do various skill checks and like combat checks and the actual poker game in question. It's just a really cool system and really thematic and really engaging, but it does take a while. And there is quite a lot of rules in it, particularly with the expansion. I mean, I've got the playmat, I've got the extra map, I've got the other rules in it. Maybe I went a little bit too far, I don't know. And that is hurting it, because it's not one I can get to the table very often. I have to treat this kind of as an event game. One that I'm going to say, look, in advance, okay, we're going to play Western Legends with all the bells and whistles, okay? Do you know how to play it? Or have a rough idea? Right, well, I better make certain I know all the rules off by heart. This is going to take a while, and that's a little bit off-putting, which is why this game has dropped a bit. But I know that when I do get this game out, it's glorious and great fun. I mean, I think I played it a few months ago actually, and again, it was just great fun. I mean, I'm not even a big Western fan, but this one is even more so than something like Carson City, this one just does it for me in getting that theme across, and I do love a good sandbox game. This is something you will notice with games that I like. Give me the freedom to do what I want to do in order to start my thematic experience. Don't put me on a linear path, because that I'm not as keen on. But yeah, it's still a great game. Western Legends at my 91. So there we go, that is my 100 to 91. I'm going to try and speed through these a little bit quicker in the future segments, because now you don't have to hear all that disclaimer stuff. But also, I want to get through the bottom half of the list a little bit quicker so that I can start focusing on top half of the list. Even though I love all these games, you really want to hear really what I'm rating 10s. You know, that top half of the list is where you're more interested, I'm sure. But yeah, it's going to be fun to do this, but I'd better get on with doing the 90 through 81, and then all the segments beyond. Still a lot of effort, but I still enjoy doing these. So that's it for me. I'll see you on the next Broken Meeple video. If you like what you see, remember to thumb up the video, consider subscribing to the channel or the Patreon, but more importantly, let me know your thoughts about all 10 of these games, whether good or bad. I want to know your opinions. Until next time, you can check out more content on the channel, including the top 100 that I did last year. Check out these 2 videos to see the beginning of that saga. So until next time, take care, and remember as always, it's only a game. Bye for now. God, it's hot.